shouldn't the president be telling people the truth?
The president is telling people the truth.
Why is he sharing fake videos?
He was making a point about CNN specifically. He was making a point that CNN has regularly taken him out of context. Jim, do you have the quote there with you?
I have the quote here, yes.
Yes, it is exactly as I just read it to you. So if anyone needs to be fact-checked, I think it should be the media.
There are news outlets that make mistakes from time to time. We own up to those mistakes. We correct those mistakes.
Not always. That's a very nice tie, Jim, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Yes. You celebrate hugging in the context of a protest, but in a Trump rally where we celebrate historic low African American unemployment, criminal justice reform, HBCUs, that rally's not allowed because guess what, Jim? It doesn't fit the ideological agenda of CNN.
I'm Stuart Shepard, and this is First Liberty Live. First, thank you for liking and sharing our videos. You are an important part of this project, and I am grateful for the help that you give us. Thank you for passing it along to your family and friends. If you care about these issues, they will too. Former White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany has a book coming out in December. It is titled, For Such a Time as This, My Faith Journey Through the White House and Beyond. She's currently in the Beyond, moved on from the White House, and that sounded exactly like something we want to talk about. So hi, Kayleigh.
Hey, good to join you, Stuart.
You spend an entire chapter in your book talking about the foundations of your Christian worldview and how that came to be. Tell us how your faith came to be such an important part of how you view everything.
Well, I grew up in a small town called Plant City, Florida, with two wonderful parents who really instilled in me the values of faith and family and hard work, and took me to my Southern Baptist church. And I grew up in those pews and went on to go to Catholic school, and it's that foundation that my parents, firmly sown within me that stayed with me even as I left to go to more left-wing institutions, shall we say, like Harvard and Oxford and Georgetown. So it's certainly my family putting those values in me.
Something that always impressed me about you is you are not afraid to take the hard questions and not afraid to push back on those hard questions. And I read in the book that where you got the knack for finding the right answer started all the way back there in Plant City High School on the high school debate team at the winter strawberry capital of the world. Tell me how that early debate experience and then your experiences since then helped set you up to be able to handle the hard questions.
Yeah, so I actually went to the Academy of the Holy Names in Tampa, Florida. We lived in Plant City until my senior year, but I went to a all-girls Catholic private school, and while I was there, I did do debate. I was also a cheerleader, but I really loved debate, and that's where I excelled on Saturdays doing those debate tournaments. I was someone who grew up in my dad's truck listening to Rush Limbaugh, and I really learned my political truth from the great late Rush Limbaugh. So when I went to those debate tournaments, I came with my Ronald Reagan quote book. I started virtually every, I did Congress. That was the event that I chose to do. And I started every speech with a Ronald Reagan quote, basically every speech. And then, my political views were informed by my entire livelihood growing up in those informative days of my younger years, listening to Rush and forcing my friends to listen to it as well as I grew to go into high school and drive for myself.
You spent quite a few pages in the book explaining the value to us personally of an honest, fair, hard question. And you say it illustrates a biblical truth that's found in Proverbs about sharpening our mind. Share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the concept is biblical for sure, and it's iron sharpening iron. And, when I went to Oxford, let's say, I encountered people who had very divergent worldviews than my own. My professor, or they call it a tutor there, where you sit one-on-one and read your paper out loud and they debate you. It's a very challenging environment, I would say, more challenging than the press podium even. It was good training for that. But one of my tutors was a former member of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, someone who's a pro-Israel Christian conservative, a very different worldview than my own, but she challenged me. It made me better. It made me stronger. It made me more articulate in my point of view because I had to defend my point of view. So I use that iron sharpens iron phrase to say, those with differing views than my own through my life have ended up making me better in the long run and better able to excel at my job.
Because we work in the legal profession and are in court cases, that idea of hearing other ideas while maintaining your own point of view is such an important thing from a Christian perspective, for us to be able to maintain our witness while we're also maintaining our worldview. I'd like you to unpack just a little bit, because you talk about this in the book, how that professor that you just mentioned, it helped you understand that you can maintain your Christian worldview while maintaining respect and understanding for people who take a very different point of view. How do we do that in real life day to day?
Yeah, I think that's the key, is one, not to be threatened by another person's point of view. And certainly in the political context, there's something so much more important than politics, and it's faith. And it's, for me, being a Christian believer, but understanding that the alternative viewpoint can coexist with your own, and never allowing someone else's alternative view to kind of, for lack of a better word, trigger you to lose your cool. I remember being on CNN sets where I was the lone conservative against 8 people, and certainly it would get hot and heated at times. People had their spirited point of views. But I was very good at maintaining my cool in those scenarios where I was vastly outnumbered. And it's because of a piece of advice that was given to me from the late Alan Combs, who was a Democrat, but he was a mentor of mine. And he said to me, remember, do not fight fire with fire, fight fire with water. And what he meant by that was so sound, that if you don't lose your cool, if you're the person who's calm, still, maintain the truth, but if you can be calm in doing so, you automatically get people to listen to what you have to say by virtue of your presentation. So I think that's important, just knowing that it's okay if someone has a different point of view than you. Keep your cool and have your facts.
We are currently representing several clients who were fired because of their faith, a football coach, a couple flight attendants. We're currently at this moment representing 40 Navy SEALs who are at risk of losing their careers because they're requesting a religious accommodation against the Department of Defense's vaccine mandate. You tell a story in your book that reflects on the ridiculous cancel culture that we're in. And it starts out light, but you make a really important point. You called it the Domino's pizza controversy. Unpack for us what happened then, and then apply that to where we are today.
Yeah, so that was crazy. And it just illustrates how inane and ludicrous the dialogue has gotten, and how personal that it's gotten. More vitriolic it seems sometimes than ever before, the back and forth, and almost silly at times. This illustrates that, I was White House press secretary. I've had a Twitter account for a long time, many moons before I became White House press secretary. I think I was working at Fox as a producer at the time, maybe. I tweeted, at Domino's, I love your pizza way better than New York pizza. I'm a big fan of Domino's. Which
is a highly controversial position. I just want to establish that, but go ahead.
It is very controversial. But one time a Lincoln Project member tweeted at Domino's and said something to the effect of, Domino's, you've lost your reputation. I don't remember exactly what he said, but something targeting them. For a tweet I had sent many, many years before I even became press secretary. It was insanity that they try to cancel Domino's over a tweet that was sent before I was even press secretary. But Domino's actually, to their credit, tweeted in response, wow, that's 2020 for you. And I'm paraphrasing. And they were making the point, look at how crazy it's all gotten, that you can't even just say you like a simple brand of pizza. It really is something else. But my staff celebrated. I got them all Domino's pizza, and we made light of it and had a lot of fun.
What does that tell us about the proper response to cancel culture? How do we learn from that when people try to cancel us today? What's the right way to combat that?
I think share your truth louder, always in a graceful manner, but share the truth loudly. Be bold. You've got to be courageous, because they will try to come after your career, your livelihood. If you're a conservative Christian, certainly that seems to often be the type of individual who comes under the lens or the target of cancel culture. But to be strong, I'm reminded of a story I just read yesterday about a man on Broadway who lost his job because he simply said that houses of worship, he was a Christian, should not be closed due to COVID-19 mandates, and that he wanted to sing at his church as someone who sung for a livelihood and sung as a Christian. And for that, he lost his job on Broadway. So I think we have to be loud and just not allow this to happen. Be loud, but respectful.
You devote an entire chapter in the book to the world's most adorable little girl, your daughter Blake, and you talk about what's that again?
who's napping right now. I'm trying to.
I'll try to keep my voice down then. But you talk about the pressure of balancing a highly demanding job, I mean, one of the most demanding jobs in the world, with the demands of being a mom. What did you learn during your time at the White House that other moms can benefit from?
Well, I learned that moms are real heroes. So are dads. My husband does a great job helping with some of those duties. But look, I think the one thing is to know that there's never a wrong time to have a child. And what I mean by that is this. I got this high profile job on the Trump campaign. So before I ever became press secretary, and I thought to myself, what better time to have a child than now, taking on this new enormous role? But I didn't let that stop me or deter me. I was someone who wanted a career, but also had in my heart to be a mother. So my husband and I got pregnant. I had Blake. We took her all the way from Iowa to New Hampshire with the help of my mom and many others. And then I took the job as press secretary. I was nervous about taking it because it meant being away from her. During the pandemic was raging, so I had to leave her in Florida, and I had to go myself to the swamp. So I was nervous to leave her behind, but I remember crying and my physical tears dropping on her cute little sweet body. And she lit up in that moment with her very first smile. And I knew it was her way of saying, Mommy, go do this, and God's way of saying, go do this. So I think if you have in your heart that you want a career and you also want to be a mom, you don't have to let either desire go. It's very challenging, I know, to find childcare and all the time consumption of being a mom, but there's a way to make it work. And I think I'm living proof of that.
I've often talked to young people who are concerned about the idea of going into a career in public service, whether running for office or a job like you had, working in an administration or someone's office on Capitol Hill. What's your advice for young people who are Christian or people of faith who are wanting to pursue that kind of career? What should they be thinking going in?
I think, number one, your reputation is everything. So go in, work hard. There's a lot of people, a lot of staffers at congressional offices, fewer in the White House or the West Wing or the executive branch. Generally, there's a lot of young people there. So work hard and be passionate, because I had a burning passion in my heart instilled in me from listening to Rush all those years. And I also worked hard and always tried to work harder than the person next to me. And it got me a long way. Eventually, like my dad said, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So, hard work, I think, is what got me to where I am, and being creative and constantly being the person that put my head down and just did the job. So I think that would be my best piece of advice.
Long ago, when I was in high school, I got in the habit of starting every book by reading the very end before I read the book. So I hope I don't ruin it for anybody, but I'm going to read the very, very end of your book. You close with these words of encouragement, and this is you speaking. God has for you a plan, a purpose. No one can stop his plan for your life. He will lead you to victory and carry you through the trials if you only let him. Indeed, you are here for such a time as this. This is my story, you're speaking there, but rest assured he has already written yours. How do we live that out every day?
Yeah, I think by trusting in him. I think it's, thank you for reading the end of my book. Obviously, you put a lot of thought into those last words to leave readers with. I talked about my life journey, and there were certainly trials and tribulations. I've had a pretty blessed life. I would be the first to admit that. But, I had the breast cancer gene, the BRCA2 gene, and had to overcome a health adversity. Obviously, I fought hard to get my way to eventually become press secretary. There are certain trials that come with that. It's obviously competitive in politics, and but my point in mentioning that is God had a plan for my life. And I do believe he wanted me to be press secretary at that moment of time in the Trump administration. And when you can rest assured that no matter what's happening professionally or personally, that God has your journey laid out. And it's hard to do this. I had many times where I worried quite a lot. But when you know that he's got a master plan and all you have to do is follow his plan, make good choices, live life like a Christian man or woman with integrity, and work hard, he will take you to that ultimate endpoint where he wants you and desires you to be, and where you will be most fulfilled because you're ultimately fulfilling God's plan. So when my dad, when I was nervous of taking the job as press secretary, said to me, maybe you were made for such a time as this. Obvious words from the book of Esther. And a Democrat commentator separate and apart from him said to me, Kayleigh, maybe you were made for such a time as this. So I knew God wanted me to hear those words, and I wanted to deliver them to the readers of this book, because I believe everyone watching you, Stuart, right now, and me, is in their certain place, in their moment in time, in the circumstance they're in, for a reason and a purpose, and you just have to ask Christ why, and he will show you, much like he did for me.
Very encouraging. I know you've got a busy schedule. Anything else you'd like to share before I let you go?
It's great to be back with you. I love First Liberty. I wrote my first book, The New American Revolution, and did a whole chapter on the great work you guys do. I've just been so impressed that we have a fighter for religious freedom in First Liberty. And, I'll say my mom always says, all you do is go on TV and you talk about, the problems, but like who's actually doing something to fix them? And First Liberty certainly is. So it's really good to be with you a second time, Stuart, and I'm just a big fan of all you guys are doing.
Well, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. And thank you for making time for us. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you. The book is called For Such a Time as This. It'll be out in early December, just in time for Christmas, I should point out. Just saying. Kayleigh McEnany, thank you so much.
Thank you, Stuart.
All right. First Liberty Institute is a nonprofit law firm that is dedicated exclusively to religious freedom cases. If that resonates with you, would you please consider supporting us, joining with us, and just click on the big red Give button. Let me just say thank you in advance from all of us. And we will see you next week right here on First Liberty Live.